Hi there, Andy from SSL here, and today we're taking a look at the multitude of new features available in 360 1.6. From enhanced VST3 DAW control to MIDI CC for UF8 and UF1, assignable button colours, follow selected track improvements for UF1, adjustable control surface brightness, dedicated MCU profiles for Mixbus and Reaper, through to collapsible sections and the return of zoom in the 360 plugin mixer. Whether you're a UF8, UF1 or UC1 owner, there's something for everyone in this release. Now I know a lot of you are eagerly awaiting the next 360 channel strip plugin, which is in the works and rest assured will be released before the end of the year. In the meantime, let's check out this mammoth 360 1.6 release. The easiest way to update to 1.6 is via the SSL download manager. If you haven't already installed it, log into your SSL account and find it in the software products section. Once downloaded, go to the 360 tab and update 360 as well as any 360 enabled plugins you have. You must update your 360 enabled plugins in order to access the new features and ensure compatibility. Finally, in 360, update the firmware for UF8, UF1 and UC1 via the Update Firmware buttons. With 1.6, we're bringing enhanced DAW integration to 360 controllers via VST3 extensions. Up until now, users of VST3 DAWs have enjoyed integration of solos, mutes and selected track using the plugin mixer layer. But we're really stepping up the game with the addition of DAW fader level, pans, sends, and even track color. These features are now in place for Cubase, Nuendo, Live, Studio One, Reaper, and Luna. It's worth saying that this doesn't make the MCU control layer of these DAWs redundant. We're just offering up a different method of control, and we'll weigh up the pros and cons of each approach at the end of this section. For now, let's take a closer look at the implementation of these new features using Cubase as an example. In 360, let's go to the UF8 page and set layer 3 to the plugin mixer, and then press layer 3 on the unit. I'll do the same for UF1 in 360, again set the hardware to layer 3 by pressing and holding the 360 layer button like so, and then pressing the third button at the top. So here's our Cubase session. And I've got 360 enabled channel strip plugins on every track, using a mixture of channel strip 2 and 4KB in this case. At the top of UF8, UF1 and the UC1 displays, we can now see the track colour being pulled through from the DAW, making it a lot easier to identify tracks in our session. In 360 itself, you'll see the track colours just above the track names. Remember, the functionality I'm describing here is the same for Nuendo, Live, Studio One, Reaper and Luna. Any differences that exist, I'll highlight as we go. Now here's where the new features get even more interesting. Up until 360 1.5, we've been used to controlling the output faders and pan controls from the plugins themselves. But now we can switch these to the DAW's faders and pans with the plugin and DAW buttons. Notice how the fader caps and pan controls change style to indicate this. You can see the faders on UF8 and UF1 are now controlling the DAW, as is UC1's output control. To control the DAW pan on UF8, ensure the pan button is engaged here. The pan control is available underneath the small display on UF1 here, and via the extended functions menu on UC1 here. By the way, the plugin or DAW toggle function can be actioned from the hardware using the plugin button on UF8, the plugin button on UF1, and the plugin parameter in the extended functions menu of UC1. As per 360 1.5, you can control mutes and solos, but in 1.6 we've made sure to include the much requested solo clear functionality, which you can access directly from UF8 by pressing and holding the clear button, and then pressing any active solo. Next, let's take a look at controlling sends, which have their own dedicated section in 360. To control sends on UF8, simply press the desired send number on the 1 to 8 keys. I'm now controlling send 1 on the VPOTs. And now I'm controlling send 2. I can of course flip the sends to the fader, and for Cubase and Nuendo only, I can toggle the sends on and off using the top row of buttons. When you're done changing send levels, press the send number button to revert the VPOTs to their previously assigned function. One of the things I really enjoy about controlling the DAW via the plugin mixer layer is the ability to set UF1 to control a completely different track to the one being controlled on UC1 and UF8. To do this, I simply engage the master button and scroll to my desired track. So there we go, some really cool enhanced DAW integration for the plugin mixer layer of UF8, UF1 and UC1. Now, this functionality isn't designed to completely replace the MCU control. It's an alternative method you can use, and the beauty of SSL controllers having 3 layers is that you can easily switch between them to get the best of both worlds. Perhaps layer 1 being your MCU control layer, or layer 2 or 3 being the plugin mixer control layer. There are some things the MCU control does better, and others the plugin mixer layer does better. For example, you may view having to insert a 360 enabled channel strip on every track you want to control as being an advantage or disadvantage. One definite advantage of the plugin mixer layer is that you get more characters displayed for your track names. You also get to see the DAW track colours, have synchronised track selection, and as we've just seen, you're able to set UF1 to control a different DAW track by simply pressing the master button. If you're after VST3 instrument control, generic third-party plugin control, or the ability to trigger keyboard commands, then the original MCU layer is better in that regard. Either way, be sure to give it a go and find out what works best for you. You'll be pleased to know that Zoom is back and it's even better than before. You can toggle between the 2 zoom states using the default and overview buttons here, which of course can be controlled directly from the zoom button on UC1 and 2 on your keyboard. But that's not all. Right-clicking on either button gives you the ability to specify the zoom amount, meaning you can really tailor the mixer to suit your screen resolution. You've been asking us for more flexibility within the plugin mixer GUI for a while, and we're now pleased to introduce collapsible sections, allowing you to see what you want, when you want. I can collapse everything from the channel metering, the input section, dynamics, EQ, sends for VST3 DAWs, additional parameters, and the output fader tray section. You can now control more 360 enabled channel strip features directly from the plugin mixer, such as AB, HQ mode, undo redo, width modes, and compressor gain makeup from within the new track section of the mixer. .360 1.6 sees the introduction of a MIDI CC layer for UF8 and UF1. A lot of customers have been asking for a way of controlling their favourite synthesizers, sample libraries, and external processing units like modular synths and reverbs. So rather than being constrained to a handful of encoders on your MIDI keyboard, you can now do MIDI CC from your SSL control surface. The best way to configure a MIDI CC control layer is to run it on one of your spare DAW layers, so you can switch between regular DAW control and MIDI CC. I've configured MIDI CC on layer 2 here, which means the messages are sent on vMIDI port 5. If I were to configure MIDI CC on DAW1, then the messages would be sent on vMIDI port 1, and on DAW3 they are sent on MIDI port 9. So it's either 1, 5 or 9. Whilst on the control setup page, I want to ensure that MIDI CC transport link to is set to be my primary DAW. For example, Pro Tools on DAW1 in this case. Having this set ensures I'll get transport control for my DAW on the MIDI CC layer. Now, let's switch UF1 to layer 2 by pressing and holding the 360 layer button and selecting it here, and let's do the same for UF8 by simply pressing the layer 2 button. Back in 360, let's jump across to the UF8 configuration page, and here we can see the default assignments of CCs across the control surface. With UF8 and UF1, we have the ability to remap the CCs however we like across the units. The faders and VPOT send out continuous values from 0 to 127, whilst the softkeys and VPOT push functions toggle between 0 and 127, and the displays give me feedback on the current value of each CC. In terms of layout, the UF8 and UF1 have 5 pages or banks as you might like to think of them. On UF8, I switch between them using the softkey 1 to 5 buttons, and on UF1, I switch between them using the page arrow keys here. And I can use a channel encoder to make my way through 8 different CCs on the fader for every page. Remember, the more UF8s you have, the more mappable CCs you get per page too. So let's take a practical look at remapping CCs on the units. For this example, I'm using UF8 by Arturia in Pro Tools, but please consult your software's user guide as each DAW and virtual instrument will have its own MIDI CC configuration method. I've record-armed this virtual instrument track, and when I expand the settings menu, I can see the MIDI CC assignments. As with many instruments, modulation is assigned to CC1, so let's leave UF8 Fader 1 assigned to this and give it mod as a label and assign a colour, and this colour is helpfully represented on the select key. With this particular software, I can actually edit the CC assignments of the instrument itself, but not all software allows this, so let's show how easy it is to remap CCs at the UF8 end. On Fader 2, I want Envelope 1 Attack, Controller 73, and on Fader 3, I want Envelope 1 Release, Controller 72. I can simply type 73 and 72 and give them a label in 360. I can then give them a colour to match the software GUI, which is red. And there we go. Easy as that. To round out this example, let's do a MIDI learn to assign this softkey on UF8 to the sync button toggle here, and we'll label it sync. Don't forget that you can also map UF1 exactly how you want it in the same way via the UF1 page. Another useful feature of our MIDI CC implementation for UF8 and UF1 is the ability to trigger program changes. On UF1, you can trigger these by pressing the Mode button and then using the top row of 4 keys plus the 5 to 8 button to access 5 to 8. With 8 program or patch changes per page, you have 40 available in total from UF1. It's a similar affair on UF8, where the Send plugin 1 to 8 buttons are used to trigger the program changes instead. Again, you have 8 per page. The program change messages are configured in 360. With each patch, you can assign a label and configure the appropriate bank, subbank, and program messages for your MIDI device. And of course, you can assign a colour to each one. As you can see here, I'm using program changes to move between different playlists and load different presets in UF8. If you're looking to use the MIDI CC layer to control external devices, then you can do this in various ways. One way would be to create a MIDI track in your DAW and route the incoming SSL vMIDI out of your desired hardware MIDI port. Or you could use a program like MIDI Patch Bay to route the vMIDI directly to your connected MIDI hardware. Finally, in terms of saving MIDI CC profiles in SSL 360, you will notice the addition of the MIDI CC save and load area on the left-hand toolbar. Whilst the normal profile save and load buttons above will save the MIDI CC mapping and MIDI channel information, the MIDI CC save and load can be used to save the labels, colours, and MIDI CC recall values separately. This may be useful if you have one particular MIDI CC mapping across many different instruments or devices, allowing you to easily recall appropriate labels, colours, and starting values for each one. We've had lots of people asking, when will UF1 get the ability to follow the selected track in the DAW? And we're pleased to say there's been some great news on this subject. Let's break it down for each DAW. As of 360 1.6, you can see my UF1 is now automatically following as I select tracks in Logic Pro, like so. Just ensure that Control Surface follows track selection is ticked in the Control Surface settings menu for this to work. It works with Luna too. Just be sure to enable Banked Selected Track in the Controller's Preferences tab. It also works in Reaper by default, so no need to enable anything there. In other MCU DAWs like Cubase, Nuendo, Live Studio One and Mixbus, UF1 can only automatically follow the selected track if it falls within the current MCU controller bank, which is a slight improvement on before, but let's be honest, not particularly helpful in big sessions. However, the good news is that with the enhanced DAW integration via VST3s, including the ability to control fader levels and sends on the plugin mixer layer, UF1 will follow the selected track across the whole session. So for users of those DAWs, be sure to set up the plugin mixer layer to have access to this functionality. In 360 1.6, we've revisited the behaviour of the channel encoder, making some important changes to provide a more efficient workflow. For all MCU DAWs, fader cell is now the default and recommended mode of the channel encoder. With fader cell selected, as I rotate the encoder, it makes its way across the DAW session, moving one by one through each track in the controller bank before automatically banking to the next one for you. It will do this all the way up to and including the tracks at the end of the session, which was a little bit fiddly in 1.5. You may also have noticed that as I'm scrolling the channel encoder, UF1 is automatically selecting each track as I go, which can be really helpful for certain MCU functions that work on the selected track. For example, controlling sends in channel mode in Logic Pro, this automatic track selection ensures that I never accidentally adjust the wrong send level by forgetting to select the track. With this new and improved fader cell mode, it is vital that you configure fader cell range in 360 appropriately for your system. To do this, go to the UF1 page in 360, and if you have one UF1 or one UF1 and one UF8, select the first option. If you have multiple UF8s, select the option that matches your setup to ensure everything behaves correctly. To the right of fader cell range, you'll see the tick box for auto select, which you can enable or disable according to your preference. A common request we've seen customers ask for with UF8 and UF1 is the ability to set up colours for the soft keys. And with 360 1.6, we've opened this up. Any of the user assignable keys can now be customised with a choice of 12 colours from the palette in 360. For instance, I can colour this instrument key blue, and this plugin key green, or this cycle key orange. The same goes for UF8, where I can set this nudge command to purple, and this scrub key to yellow. With these changes, you can really customise your controller, with the colours helping you distinguish your favourite DAW commands and keyboard shortcuts. We've now added dedicated DAW profiles for Harrison Mixbus and Reaper. To configure your UF8 or UF1, first ensure you have selected Mixbus or Reaper as a DAW in the Control Setup page. Then make sure your layer selection on UF8 and or UF1 is also correct. In Mixbus, head to the Preferences menu and then Control Surfaces, and you'll see the dedicated option for SSL 360 UF8 UF1. Please note, you'll only see this option if running Mixbus version 9.2 or later. Click Show Protocol Settings and then choose how many UF8s you have. If you have a single UF8, a UF1 or a UF8 and a UF1, just select the first option here. Then set the SSL vMIDI port as appropriate. For DAW layer 1, choose port 1 for send and receive. If using Reaper, follow the same process in 360, choosing Reaper on the Control Setup page and also on the UF8 and UF1 pages. In Reaper itself, go to the Preferences menu and then Control OSC Web and add a Mackie control. Then set the SSL vMIDI ports as appropriate. For DAW layer 1, choose port 1 for send and receive. Please note that with Reaper's standard MCU implementation, you must double tap the select keys to individually select a track, otherwise the selections will simply add together. Reaper users should be aware that the inbuilt MCU functionality offers control of essential parameters only, such as faders, solos, mutes, pan, transport, and automation. Thankfully, Reaper users are no strangers to customization, so for the control of sends, plugins and more, might want to consider looking at the third-party control surface extension scripts that go further. Some links to these scripts can be found on our support pages. For more detailed information on the Mixbus and Reaper profile mapping and operation, please check out the UF8 and UF1 user guides. UF8 and UF1 users now have the ability to choose between +6 and +12 fader scaling when using Cubase and Nuendo MCU profiles. Choose your desired fader max level setting in 360 that matches your choice of fader level in Project Setup menu, Volume Max setting. Please note that although Cubase and Nuendo state +12, in fact their MCU implementation only ever gets up to +10 at a maximum. This is not a restriction on the SSL side of things. You can now adjust the brightness of your UF8, UF1 and UC1 controllers via the control setup page of 360. Users had fed back that the controllers could feel a little bright in dark rooms, so now you can take control of this. Choose from one of the 5 available options in the control surface brightness drop-down list to find the one that best suits your studio ambiance. That's all for now. Thank you for watching and see you on the next one.